Hi, I'm Monisha. Good morning and good afternoon, evening to whoever is watching. I'm Joi Barua here. I'm a musician, artist, composer. I'm from the Northeast and I've lived in Bombay for the last 20 years. My work and my focus is divided between work here in Bombay and the storytelling from my land in terms of my music, and also work which I do abroad with symphonies in terms of Broadway, etc. In the last 2 years, I was introduced to the Inclusion Summit by Feroz, which has again opened my uh, eyes and to a level my understanding of this whole world of people that we think exists outside our comfort zones, but whom we eventually might become or whom we might see in terms of a very internal space in our families.
Been an amazing, I think, eye-opener for us as well. After attending the Annual Inclusion Summit, and we met people like you, and I think the spectrum has only widened for us. In terms of our approach and vision to life through music, or through the lens of music. How do you see the world today?
Why I chose my path is an interesting thing, because sometimes you cannot choose. The nature of things and nature of life is such that you tend to realize what you really love when you move ahead through other things. Everybody has a different time of calling, and such was mine. Though my first love was music, but I didn't know what to do with it, because we grew outside the whole, the center point of Indian politics and culture, which is like Delhi and Bombay. We grew up in the Northeast, which has its own different kind of, it's a whole different India by itself. It's a whole different world into itself. We come from a land rich in tribal history and rich in indigenous knowledge. That's the whole of the Northeast. We grew up with a different kind of music, different kind of reading, different kind of sense of aesthetic. So Bollywood was really not the case for us. And though we liked music and we loved music infinitely, I didn't know what to do with it, because I grew up with the whole sense of Bhupen Hazarika, his brother, a few other things, our own, others, Vishnu Rabha, and then the Beatles, Paul McCartney, everything. I didn't know what to do with it. So I grew up very confused. During graduation, I had a band and I was doing amazing stuff in Assam. Post my graduation, when I thought I would do music, I went to Delhi. I thought I was land up singing in bars, etc. And there on trying to be an artist. But I realized I was not in the right place. It took me 2-3 years, because as a musician, we think from the heart. We don't think from the mind, I don't know if thinking from the heart is actually a term, but but it is what we do. Post 2-3 years, I called up a very dear friend here whose help I sought. And then he invited me over to Bombay. Bombay changed things for me. And, I started training myself in other things. But I realized as soon as I was getting indoctrinated into Bollywood and, types of how they make songs, why you need to understand movies, where our stories come from. Before this, I was a singer in a band, But when I came to Bombay, I understood, though in a film, the song supports the visual. You're telling the story of a hero, or you're telling the story, and you're supporting the story. But still, you need to know the story to get the song done. That was very important for me, and that took me back again to understanding how Bhupen Hazarika and everybody else wrote songs. So while I came to Bollywood, I would see the music directors getting it from their film directors about what the story was, the geography, the whole sense of things, the politics of a land, that comes into song. Then I understood how Bhupen Hazarika and all made songs when there were no films. They had to understand the whole geography of it. They had to understand the whole research of it. They had to go through the anthropology of the people to make a song. That became very fascinating for me, when I would be the creator of my own journey. So while learning what it takes for a song to happen, I realized in my head, and probably then I was thinking with my mind, that I needed to learn how to make a song, and then I needed to learn my land. And that took me back to, not geographically, but that took me back to understanding my land, my people, our stories, our folklore, our history, and how to turn that around into a sense of music that is contemporary and timeless. Why is it necessary to bring forward history, to bring forward learnings, and that becomes the role of an artist, and that becomes essential tool of an artist.
You mentioned this amazing thing about understanding the anthropology of various humans in the society, right? And that is where I think stems my next question from, because when we say society, uh, I think somewhere the ableist side of us never focus on people who lack some form of ability, right? It's always holistic in the sense that, okay, there are people, they have their life stories have struggled, but somewhere when we are visualizing that story of a human being, of that individual, we never imagine them to have maybe a part of their body not functioning. I think that is how I used to at least, very sort of imagine another human being. I would imagine struggles being directly related to poverty, or say some other form of war affected, etc., but never that incomplete human form. Somewhere I think just because we are brought up in a certain way, being narrated stories, and historically our stories never involved people with at least physical disability, and maybe somewhere that's where I'm trying to construe this question, that to me inclusion was never about incorporating somebody who was not fully able-bodied. Okay, till I had my own child and I realized that disability could be of so many kinds. Some of them are visible, some of them are invisible, and there are so many other facets to a human being's life. To you, what does the term uh, inclusion mean?
I think this is the most important question, because with my journey into the Inclusion Summit, and as I started reading a little more, inclusion becomes a very broad runway. It is not a narrow runway of one thing. It's a broad runway of many things. It is differently able people. It is people with differences culturally, geographically, sexually. It has become this whole other thing. For example, do we include ourselves in the idea of India? Is that inclusion? That's inclusion for me, if you ask. On the other hand, if you ask me, when I was going through and I was reading Firoz's work, the series with which he has done, with the series that he has done, Grit, and when he had profiled Mayor DP Singh. And now when I see Kia, and these are two, I have worked on the Inclusion Summit, I've been there, but these are the two people probably I've interacted a little closer. There's a sense of, intimate space here. This is what I've realized, that, the taking away probably of one ability super enhances a few others. Is there really something which is like perfectly abled? Is there some person who's like perfectly able? I don't think there is. A lot of
Absolutely.
us who go about life with a lot of missing pieces, I think. Most of us, probably all of us, if somebody doesn't have a leg, somebody might have lost a sense of history or a sense of memory, or might have lost connection with somebody with whom he or she had a great sense of empathy. Now that exercise in empathy doesn't happen anymore. You know what I mean? So am I differently able? Or am I disabled, at that point? I think there's no one way to say this. Kia, I think Kia is what she is. She's come here, and I wouldn't say optimized, because that would be I won't say she optimized everything, because that would be really doing a disservice to her abilities. She really has amazing abilities. This is what I feel. It's great. And if she loves writing, if she loves speaking, that the fact that she's able to love something, and exercise that love, is the most beautiful thing for me. So this is a zone that I'm still trying to learn of what it is. Probably I'll never learn. Probably I'll just have a sense of understanding and learning every day. And this chapter will unfold infinitely.
So, Joy, I'll tell you a little about, my side of the story, because being a mother to a child who was born with a challenge, a life challenge, right? I think, it's been such an unlearning experience for me, more than anything else. And this is as a mother I speak, right? When any child is born, it's like a fresh canvas, right? Every life is like a fresh canvas. You don't know what the child is going to grow up to be, bodily or mentally, right, at that point of time. And somewhere I feel the role of the parents in our society is so important. Where I felt during my 18 years of motherhood that you cannot impose yourself as a parent on a child, right? No adult should do it. If they should they become a parent to a child, or burden them, okay, with their ambitions which had been left incomplete, and say that, okay, I want you to become this, or I want you to become that. This used to happen at one point of time. Today I think times have changed. Parents are a little more open minded, and they allow the child to grow in their own way, encourage their talents. I'm not certain of how it is in the rural side of our country, but at least in the urban side, people are slightly more open minded. But still, when you have a child born with certain kind of disability, you have a challenge. How does a mother or a parent nurture that child? And that is where I felt I felt excluded. I felt excluded. I'm not talking about Kia at all. I never left her alone to feel excluded anywhere, or as any part of the society. I took that whole burden on myself because I put myself to get kicked around, to get slapped around, before anything could hurt her. And that's how I parented her, right? That is where I think the need, or the deep want of feeling included for me started being born, right? That feeling of being included, being born, because somewhere I felt that no, the society is not accepting in many ways. And it sort of grew that fear in me that, oh my God, okay, tomorrow if I'm not there, what kind of a world would I leave behind for my child? Where I think I realized that while I nurtured Kia and Naira both equally, because at my house we don't really differentiate it, but I also have to sensitize the society around me that no matter how they are, what they bring on the table, they need to have that seat on the table. Right. That is where my journey changed. It kind of pivoted, my direction in life. And I said, while I'm following my own path of becoming who I was becoming professionally, I also needed to parent and become a part or a crusader for inclusion in the society. Right?
I can see your situation from an outsider's perspective. All of us grew up with a very different handicaps. Probably Kia's life has been happier because you understood what it is. Some of us who grew up with children and were weak in studies had more hell to go through. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Kia has found what she loves. You accepted it. And she's getting happiness out of that. The fact that you, as a parent, you stood by that journey, I think that's all a parent needs to be. Just enable your children to be happy. They will find that Everest and climb it again and again and again. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But if you put on your sense of blinders that, we didn't have this, and then what's the sense of growing up ever? Did the parents just grow up, or did they grow old, right? If you birthed somebody, I think it's your responsibility to understand where the child is going, how the child is enabled, and to enable that kind of love and happiness. I think that is where you score a perfect, 100 out of 100 or 10 out of 10. You are seeing that, and that is what it is.
And somewhere I feel, Joy, that the whole concept of inclusion is not, it doesn't lie outside us, right? It is all within us. It starts 100%. From our home atmosphere, 100%. And then it starts growing out of that.
Who tells anybody what a language is?
Exactly.
There is no perfect English, right? Now that we know, right?
Yes.
The BBC English exists inside the channel and in front of the monitors, right? There is no perfect English. So we felt excluded. People in my land, there are different ways they speak Assamese. First we would be thinking, why is it? Then you learn they have come from different parts of the world to assimilate. Some have come in from China, some have come in through Burma, some have come in from Thailand.
So they carry their own influences and create.
They carry the influences, and certain words are pronounced in a different way. So certain letters which are pronounced in a different way. If you're aware, this is where the spirit of inclusion starts within you. You say, no, this is all that makes up my land,
Absolutely. So Joy, just wanted to ask your take on why you feel there is this immense need for creating inclusion, or rather more inclusion, in our global society today?
I think if you come down to the brass tacks of it, I think I think there's a whole lot of talent that is out there that can contribute to the world, to the nations. That there's a whole lot of revenue that's going to come from there. If you're looking at numbers, there's a sense of citizenry there who will vote for the right person. And with the kind of talent and the minds that these people have, I don't think we've really understood what we are leaving out.
Right. So what you're saying, in other words, is that there has to be a more conscious approach, right? We can't just keep thinking it, feeling it, and speaking it, but we really need to start doing more, doing or acting more consciously to create that inclusion.
So there are people in the public space who need to at least address this problem.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. I know everybody's got his own things in life. His or her. They have it like. Everybody's got their own stresses. But this is a neighborhood of our things, right?
Absolutely.
How do we not address our neighborhood of our things? If I'm in a room of 100 people, I have to think about them, right? If I'm the one who's the face. So I think just because we don't have a policy or government, it doesn't absolve the rest of people who are in this position and space not to think of it.
And that is the bridge, right? Somewhere we need to do our bit, the government needs to do their bit, and then there needs to be policies to make that enactment a must rather than an option. So my next question is, Joi, in your own individual capacity, in the professional capacity that you have today, how do you think you can, make the environment around you? We're not talking about massive impact that each of us have to create, but starting off with you, how can you create that change to make the society a little more, inclusive, a little more empathetic?
I think in my 2 years, I've started off being the artist. In my personal level, I've started caring. I've started developing music around this. What I don't want to stop at the creation. This is a song. What we created for inclusion is a song, an anthem that needs to be carried into public space. So this is what will be played loud and live at the concerts. This is a huge part of where my empathy is being directed to, or my focus, if you say. So I will make it. I already have, but I'll make it a huge part of my conversations as an artist right now. Conversations meaning what I do, the way I go about, what we do on stage, what follows. When it becomes a permanent fixture in my conversation, I think there'll be a lot of people picking up on what they need to do. This is what you do. It's like going forward, right?
Right.
And this is the least that I can do. But just the fact as an artist that I care, that I'm trying to learn what it is, and this is not something that happened outside the scope of my life, or my world. My father was, he broke his hip. So he was bedridden for 3 years in the end. So it happened to him. So it happened to me.
Everybody has to go. Everybody has to go.
So none of us are outsiders anymore. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
And if I can get around to even, bringing that out in terms of what I do as an artist, I think my jobs, will have a fair amount of success.
Joi, what I have realized is that most of the differently able people have very creative talents, right? And you would have noticed that too. They're amazing singers, they're fantastic artists, and these are things, I think, which they're able to hone because they get limited, in terms of movement, and they start developing these very acute abilities which are creative in nature, right? Whether it is with an instrument, whether it is with their own voice, and they become amazing singers or artists, right? And this is something that I've seen across the spectrum of people with disabilities. these talent shows that come on television. I think there was one episode where an amazing singer, right? And this child was this adult, young adult was autistic. I don't know whether it was Saregama or India's Got Talent or which one it was, but he came up and he could not speak a sentence, but with his mother holding his hand by his side, he actually sang a full-fledged, uh, amazing Bollywood number. Have you ever thought of creating a line of singers
Oh yes, yes. This is the plan that I was trying to forge ahead with. We were trying to do it last year. Got a little stressful in terms of the work. But this as art emanating just from them.
Absolutely.
And me just being a facilitator, a curator of things. And just facilitating that whole process where they are the creators, they are the voices.
Exactly. Amazing, because I think that's all they need, right? They have the talent. They need someone to just help polish them up, give them the opportunities that come otherwise very easily to people who do not need that kind of support, because we are able to go from one place to another and then knock on the doors. But these guys need that little extra push and nudge, right? Somewhere I think that whole sense of detaching sympathy from it and saying that, I'm just giving talent its space, right? That's it. And if we start doing that, I think that will be the truest sense of inclusion.
In my head, I don't know who created this whole mainstream and unmainstream ideology.
Exactly.
For me, it's mainstream. Somebody's created a song. I'm not looking at somebody whether he's, he's not good in maths or whether he doesn't have a leg. So sometimes in my conversation, I don't have a different sense of empathy to them. You know what I mean? Like I am doing what I'm doing. Right. They are doing what they are doing. I'm doing what I can, and somebody else is doing what he or she they can. Right? I'm fine with that, because I realize in my head that all of us are born with different disabilities.
Exactly.
We have different problems in our life. We have different Everest mountains to climb. If you ask me what's a disability, the idea not to have empathy is the disability.
Absolutely.
The idea not to love is a disability. That needs treatment, serious treatment.
Absolutely.
That should be a separate segregation of people. They need work on, and they need to be worked with. Exactly. Not being able to understand, not being able to comprehend, not being able to deal with people kindly. That is disability.
This is why these conversations are so beautiful, because here we start thinking of redefining terminologies, right, which are otherwise either used recklessly or for want of good reasons loosely, right? And I think this is amazing, because the moment we start defining these terminologies, we start looking at these subjects more differently, we start thinking about them differently, we start doing or acting differently as individuals. And fantastic, Joy. I just love this last part that you mentioned. You told your bit, but what is it that you want to ask of the society around you too?
Like to create work that that has some impact at some level. It's either speaks for something or it's shaped around a certain thing. We just give it different names, but I think all of us are working at inclusion. Tomorrow I'll be in another conversation, and it'll have another name. Point is, somebody wants to be included in the parliament, somebody wants to be included in the bureaucratic forces, somebody wants to be included in the police force. It's all inclusion. Right. The point is, we've just defined different names for them in different communities and groups and your silos.
Right. This is I think the basic tendency of a human being, right, to kind of have their worth recognized, right? And there's nothing wrong with it.
If I would also be able to take a counterpoint, I said, inclusion would also mean validation at so many levels. That's a never-ending abyss that you've jumped into, or probably a black hole that you're approaching. Just be happy. There are two ways to see this for me. Like if I get too drawn into things, sometimes I think, what the hell am I doing this for? I want to be happy. This is my life. I want to be happy doing beautiful things. I want to have meaning in this life. I want to make meaning out of my life.
I think what happens with most of the people who don't get that, and I'm talking about people who are excluded from the society largely, I think with them, there is that need of acceptance. There is this need of, feeling a part of the larger,
I hear you perfectly.
Yeah. And maybe that is where differences arise, right? And we feel that, okay, fine, this person does not feel the need to be included so much, but this person really needs it because, that person is constantly being not just left out, but literally, thrown out of, circles of various circles of the society. And that is where I think that inequality arises in the society, right? And that deficit arises in the society. Somewhere, I think each of us can be left to our own, but there are some people who need that little bit of upliftment. So Joyda, I am very happy, having spent these 40-50 minutes with you. And I look forward to having more such exchanges, looking forward to more amazing work coming from your side. Thank you so much, and lots of love to everybody at home. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.